Alright guys, got a Chinook Fly for you. So this is a rabbit strip fly with like an intruder station in the front. And I like this kind of fly because caught a lot of Chinook on it. There's quite a few variants of it, so I'll change out, some of the colors and things like that just really for fun. But if it's chartreuse, blue, and white, and it wiggles, the Chinook will eat it. So a lot of room for creativity here, and you don't have to have every single piece of the pie here to get it done. You can totally change out things to make it your own. So it's more of a style than it is the exact coloring, but I know this works, and so I want to share it with you. So to save you guys the time of having to watch me, put this on, it's essentially is spider wire. I think this is 30 pound. Yeah, 30 pound spider wire. And then I just did a twisted hitch onto this piece of chartreuse bunny strip. So what I'll do here is I will tie this in on a 26 millimeter aquafly shank, and this is a copper large cone head. I don't know why I tie everything with copper. I don't have a really good reason other than I just like the way it looks. And it sinks really well. Maybe it's from mirror and finger, something like the copper bead just seems to get it done. So this is 6/0 Beavis. Nice, good, strong thread. I like white just because I don't have to change out my threads a lot. I can just kind of stick with white with almost every pattern when I'm tying anadromous fish flies. So this is really simple. Just tie in the spider wire at the length you want. That's about 3.75 inches. I just know from looking at the distance between this little spring right here, kind of gives me a rough estimate of where I'm at. So tie this in right here. And I like to tie it in on the top of the fly. Then I'll just kind of eyeball that and tie it on. Now you can do the through the eye of the hook and all that. Oregon Chinook just aren't that big, and by the time they get into the tribs, like just shoot sandy clack and all that. I mean, they fight hard, don't get me wrong, but it's not like an AK fish straight out of saltwater, so you don't need to go that heavy on it. I don't know if I mentioned it, but it is a size 2 owner SSW. That's my preferred fly. Hook. So I'm just going to fold this back. And I go all the way to the end here just because I just want it to be like even all the way across. So as I'm wrapping some stuff up, it's good to go. So got that right there. You'll see it's a little short right there, and I have it like that for a reason. So you'll see here in a second why it is that I do that. So tie it on the back. I'm just gonna try to split the hairs pretty reasonably on that bunny strip. Just like 2 is fine. Tie them behind it. Get that all the way back there. You see how there's a gap right there? When we do like the front station of this with our ostrich and our predator rab and dubbin and all that, that just gives me room to get everything in there and go over the top of that. That's why I do that. So first thing we're gonna do is, I already kind of laid it out, but this is midnight dubbing. It's a Senyo kind of synthetic dubbing. And then the next thing I'm going to use is some blue predator wrap. Man, you can use just about anything, but chartreuse, blue, and white is what I'm going for here. So that's the one I picked. I measure it off of my finger. That's about 1 inch. So I need an inch of this to wrap the body. So I'll get an inch of that. And I'll just pick this stuff out. I mean, it's not a terribly expensive material, so I don't mind. Just makes it easier to work with when I don't have any stragglers. So I need, you don't want this to be too long here, so you can kind of see right there. About there is fine. So I'll just do that, like whatever that distance is, plus half. So I kind of have already grabbed out there. So we'll cut that. There's a few long ones in here, so I'll just kind of get rid of those. I'm going to lay that on top of my dubbing, which I know you guys can't see yet. I don't have a ton of cameras laying around, so the idea though is before I lay this on the dubbing, that I want to go back and forth between my fingers and just splay it out as wide as possible, so that way when I wrap this around the shank, I get a relatively even amount of it, and it's not clumped up, so like one wrap to the next, it isn't like 3 times the amount, then 2 times the amount. So I'm going to lay that on top of my dubbing, and you'll be able to see the finished product here in a second, guys. So lay that out on top, and then I just fold my dubbing over. And the dubbing, you really want to go sparse on that. Like, it should be very see-through. Like, you should be able to see all the way through to whatever the surface is that you're laying it down on. So for me, it's like a big hairline, like a bead mat. So leave that for a second, and then I'm just going to create a dubbing loop. You can't go, like, you can kind of go too big, but for the most part, that's what you want to do. And all I did was wrap twice around the back, twice around the front, around the whole loop, and then I'll just bring my thread all the way to the front to give myself plenty of room to work. Alright, next order of business is a little bit of dubbing wax. This is Loon Low Tack Swax. I think I've had that same one for probably 2 years, so good little investment there. This is personal preference, but I typically put my dubbing spinner on there like from the get-go because it helps open up the loop. Now when you put this in, you'll notice that you can see how long the fibers are on one side. I want it like that for the body because these should be like long and they should undulate in the water. They're not really holding anything up. It's not like a shoulder. It's just body material to round out the fly so there's not exposed shank. It's for looks and a little movement and some color. So put that in my dub loop. And then I just spread it out. You take your time here. Once it's in the loop, if you already have the dubbing spinner on there, which is this Loon one's really heavy, it pulls on the thread and keeps everything pretty tight in there. You don't have to go crazy with, yanking on it. And I'll just take a pick and even out that predator wrap. And I have a lot of dubbing left over at the end of this, so I'm going to pull that out. And the reason I pull that out is because when I go to spin this, if there's a bunch of dubbing at the front, or essentially from the dubbing spinner, the first thing it runs into is a big clump of senyo dubbing or hairline dubbing or whatever. It just stops. It impedes the ability of the thread to twist all the way up evenly, and that's where I think a lot of people get a big hiccup in using this kind of technique. And it's not an overnight technique, guys. It takes some time. So now I'm just going to pinch it. Right here you can see I'm pinching it. And then I'm just going to spin my dubbing spinner a lot. Now I'm not pinching it. I'm just letting it spin. And then I'll pull it tight. And you'll see here, you can see under there all right. It's just spun up like if you bought, kind of like a brush from the store, like this one right here. But we'll use that one later for some other stuff. I'm just picking it out. I have this little loon brush right here. There's all sorts of ones. You can make them out of Velcro. You can use those, I think EP brushes or like the tool brush, not the EP brush that you buy that has fibers on it. Those work really well too. I've had this one for a long time and it just works well for me, and again, you can use just about anything. I'm barely touching this. I'm not getting in there. I'm just kind of plucking at it. All right. So you can use water. You can not use water. It just depends on what you like. As long as you grab your fibers and you wiggle, if here's the lateral line, and you're pulling and going this way. That's really what's important. Using water is definitely nice because it just makes everything lay in like immediately. But this doesn't have a ton of material in it. And when I wrap this around, it's a loose wrap. It's not like you're butting it up against itself. So I typically don't need to get it wet because I'm not trying to have everything right on top of itself to make like a shoulder. It's just not part of the body. So I've got just about all the fibers done, and I'm just going to make 2 extra wraps to seat it in place. I'll undo those, come around, pull that tight. And I wrap this forward probably 3 or 4 times. If you're just starting to do these like homemade dubbing brushes, and get it all done and you didn't tie it forward enough and it comes undone, you're going to be bummed. So do that right there. So you see I have like a little drop there. I actually like that. I like that because as I'm tapering forward, if I have 2 different lengths, right, I've got a little bit left here and I got long ones. Of course, we're going to cut them shorter, but it does help taper so that way your ostrich isn't laying right on top of itself at the same length, which will make it sticky, or at least it'll look sticky in the way that it moves in the water. So having that little drop is kind of a nice thing. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to part this hair and we're going to go over the top. And you'll notice that there's some fibers that are kind of forward of what we just wrapped, and that's totally okay because it's all going to get covered up. Nice. Okay. So on to the next station. I'm going to use the midnight dubbing again just for some continuity. Don't really use 2 different colored dubbings on a fly that's, you know, essentially like a string leech, like a really done string leech. So I'm going to lay this stuff out right there. And this is 3 different materials, I believe, in one. It's Arctic Fox in like a white, a blue, and then I think some synthetic EP brush. And I'm going to grab an inch of that. Now these fibers, because they're square on one end and then they're loose and you know they're very different sizes on the other, you want the end that you cut to lay right down the middle of your dubbing. So those are going in first. And that just gives me kind of a shoulder, and that makes the rest of these materials kind of puff up around it, which is cool because it's the head of the fly, so if it's a little bigger in the front, that's a good thing. Unless you're looking to make a fly that's big in the back, but I don't know. So I'm just measuring my predator wrap, Senyor's predator wrap, against what I just cut off of that foxy brush. So I want those to be just a smidge shorter So right there, about 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, actually from my fingers, would be where it just directly down the line of the dubbing. And I want 1/4 of whatever it is from that line in my hand. So I'm just going to go right there. And then like we did earlier, I'm just going to start spreading these out. Spreading them out. This really helps if you just wash your hands, like soap and water, Dawn, get any grease off your fingers, because you're working with so much loose material, especially synthetics, they like to stick to your fingers. So having like really clean hands will make this a lot easier. So lay that in just inside. And I cross a few of those fibers, so like maybe there's like a 1/16 of an inch of overlap between the two. And then I'm going to lay in what I want to be the longer fibers of ostrich. And you can be pretty liberal with these, because once they get wet, they really shrink. And I think when they're dry, having quite a few of them looks cool. But it's up to you. You can experiment. I think the bunny strip is really doing most of the work on this fly, but so there's probably 10 fibers in there. And then I'm going to measure it. I just want it to go slightly past where my predator wrap is here on the inside. So that's looking like about right there. Right. So I'll just leave myself a little bit of room because I need to be able to capture it inside of my dubbing loop. So you've got about 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch right there. These, I will just lay it in tight like that, and then I'll move it around inside of the dubbing loop once I get it in the dubbing loop. So I got those right there. Add a little bit more dub. Again, this is Senyo's Fusion Dub. If you've made kind of too big of a dubbing kind of station or whatever they're calling them these days, you can lay in the last ones by hand. So you could do these just off the sides or over the top or on the belly. And to be honest with you, with how big this dubbing loop is, and I haven't done one in a long time, I'm just going to do these last. So those will be just kind of like wings off the side. Right. I'm actually like really excited to swing for fall Chinook. I haven't touched a Chinook since I left Alaska. And I used to just all night, like I'd get off work and I would just be out there till like 2 or 3 in the morning on this same run, cliff hole on the Connect Talk. And I just swing it through, step to the top, and it's like if you hit the right spots of that run and it's an incoming tide, oh my gosh, so many fish. You get to the point where like you're like sick of reeling them in, and so you're like using hooks that are dull because you don't even have the strength anymore to swing up another one and then reel it in for 25 minutes. And I fished a 10 weight. A 10 weight, a airflow fist, and like T14 was what that run really called for. And this fly and variations of it, this one's pretty lightweight, but the rivers that I'm going to be using this fly on aren't nearly as, the CFS is a lot lower, and they're not nearly as deep as the Connect Talk. And the last time I was there, that river was cooking all season. It was just very fast water, so getting that fly down required a lot. So you can see that's some ridiculous amount of stuff in there. You can totally make this less, but I don't really want it to be less. I want it to be a big fly because we're fishing for kings, and I like big flies. I like the fish that eat the big flies. Yeah. So put that guy in there. And just like before, get that dubbing out of there that, is probably a little much. And then we're just going to pick this until it's in a way that we like. And this is where I'm going to spread out that ostrich, right? Because if those things are piled on top of each other, you're going to get like half a turn, and one side of your fly is going to look awesome, and the other side's not. So you just get between the fibers, and you're putting my finger, my left index finger, underneath the material, so that way I can move it. And I'm just spreading all these fibers out. To make the ostrich stand up higher over the shoulder, and the shoulder being the materials that we put in before it. So your dubbing, your foxy brush, and your predator wrap. You're going to cut those very close to the ends. And then pull those out. So you can see there, they're cut really close to the ends. That helps them stand up higher. Which I'm pretty sure when it gets wet, it really doesn't matter, but it looks good on the vise. So spin the dubbing spinner, let go, and you can see I've got this nasty clump, right? That's okay, because everything is spun tight in there, and that's the point. So that way when I go to pick it out, everything stays in. You definitely want to be gentle with the ostrich. Those will fall out the easiest because their diameter is bigger. So anything with a bigger diameter is going to need more tension on it to hold it in that loop. So you can spin it more, but really the best thing to do is just take your time. I'm pretty quick to pull out like excessive material out of these things, other than the ostrich. But for the most part, this one came out relatively decent. Alright, so that is good to go. I'm going to be right back. I actually want to wet this one down so it sits in there really well. Be right back. So I just wet down my hands. That's about it. You don't need a ton of water to get this going. And again, we're just pulling perpendicular, tight, and then just wiggling it up and down. And you're just trying to fold it over. And we're gonna start wrapping. These are nice tight wraps, as if you were like if you were doing a marabou wrap fly. That's really all this is like. Nice tight, smooth wraps. This is the one nice thing about doing this with a cone, is as I wrap tighter and tighter to the cone, it compresses the materials on top of each other and just makes for a really smooth looking fly. So now that that's in there, 2, 3, 4, 5. Trim that. I'm going to take a toothbrush. And I'm just going to go against the grain with all of this stuff. And I'm going to take my pick. I'll pick it up. So you can see that's got some nice puff to it. Alright. I'm going to do these like wings. Which ones? These look good. That's 4. So I'm trying to match it. 4 or 5 on the other side. We'll do your side first. About half an inch past the shank. And you can see there's some ends in there, and they just kind of get tucked naturally underneath the comb. And we're going to hide all that anyway because this is a good spot to put a little dubbing in front of the ostrich, which just creates like a little hydrodynamic shield, almost like a fairing on a car. If you do it sparse and you do it without really going overboard, you can make your fly dance in the water a little better. Looks alright. Or you could do bikini. What I want to do. Dubbin. Let's do some dubbin. What color dubbin should we do? I feel like I want to add a little bit of flash in here. So I'm going to use Steely Blue. Now these are long fibers. So you gotta do something with that. See how long that is right there. So I'm gonna cut that in half. And again, you don't need a ton. I'm not gonna put dubbing wax in here because these fibers are so long and thin that they just don't need it. So I'll probably do a little more than that. There we go. I'm not going to pick this out too heavy. Just a little bit. Right at the back. Palmered. I hope that comes up on the video. Like, I hope you can see it's just a subtle touch. It's not a big amount. So, cut that. Whip it. Oh, maybe not. Right. There we go. Alright, and that, guys, is my go-to Fly for Chinook salmon. It's lightweight, castable, it's got a ton of movement. It's about the right size. You know, you could go longer. I've made these up to like 6 inches before, and then this is about as small as I'll go. I can't say that being smaller, or excuse me, bigger than 6 inches is really like, it made a big difference. Like, wow, I'm catching much more fish. They're certainly harder to cast, so you know the best fly in the world is not going to work for you if you're not casting it effectively and consistently. And I think this is a good amount of size for any angler. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys catch tons of fish with this. And if you're in my boat this fall, we'll definitely catch the fish with it. So anyway, hope you guys have a great day, and look forward to seeing you soon.